All right, Marco, you started, first things first, you started piano age 7, and by 15 discovered the whole world of improvisational music. Tell me what that was like. What led to that discovery?
Yeah, that's right. You know, I don't know. It happened in the middle of high school. I sort of got over the hump of learning learning notes and chords and learning the basics on the instrument. Sort of got over that hump and met some kids in high school who just wanted to play, and we would just improvise songs for like an hour.
That's a little different from most kids who would probably want to, mimic their favorite rock stars or, or whatever. But you guys decided to go off on this different. Well,
yeah, I mean, like I had the Sweet 16 band for sure when I was 15. When I was 15, I had a band that just played tons of tunes, the Who and the Doors, and then by the middle of the end of high school, it was like, oh, you could just play A the whole time. That's around, jam per se. That led me into the whole jazz world. When I was about 17 and 18, I started listening to Oscar Peterson and like Jimmy Smith.
How'd that happen? Did somebody lead you that direction or turn you on to that?
No, I always went to, every summer I would go to like a jazz camp. I remember telling Joe that. He was just like, you went to a jazz camp, dude? It's kind of funny. But yeah, I went to some little, William Patterson College in New Jersey had a little summer thing, and I went to a Lake Placid sort of retreat for 2 weeks with Kenny Werner was teaching there, and Billy Hart was teaching there, and Jim McNeely, and it's like New York cats, like a little retreat for 2 weeks. So every summer while I was in high school, I would go study, jazz and improvisation. So I just I think that those things definitely sort of turned me on to, sort of records that you get, like essential records, jazz records, and by 17 and 18, like I said, I really started enjoying it, and I started to conceptualize, like, oh right, like taking a solo, and then later I learned at Berkeley that concept was the biggest thing. Like this teacher was all about technique is nothing, but if you know concept, that's all you need to know, and I was like, wow, it's so deep, so true, If you sort of can visualize and have a concept of what you want to do, the technique will follow. You definitely have to practice, but the technique will sort of secondary. And then as soon as I realized that, I just dove right into the jazz world and immediately changed my major at Berkeley. I was going to major in film scoring or music production and engineering, and I really liked that side of music, but I sort of immediately was like, whoa, to be a performer is actually the hardest major at this school, because you're really naked on stage. What do you... So I got way into that.
Now, along the way, you mentioned Joe. Of course, that's Joe Russo.
Joe Russo,
yeah. Half in the duo that you're associated with. You guys have made quite a name for yourself.
My other lover.
How did that teamwork happen?
Joe and I knew each other back even before high school. We met in 1990 in Franklin Lakes, New Jersey. So we discovered Led Zeppelin and Rush when we were kids. We would play Zeppelin tunes in his basement. So we met a while ago, and we kept it together. We kept in touch, and we both moved to Manhattan around the same time, and we got a gig at the Knitting Factory, and the rest is history.
Now, of course, you two are a duo. In that context, you also play the trio quartet. What's your favorite setting?
For me, it's a balance of all the worlds, because seems to be like grass is always greener sort of syndrome. If you do something for too long, grass is going to be greener on the other side. So, couldn't say I'm a fan of all of them.
Let's talk about the style of music, experimental jazz, or whatever label you want to give it. It's, I guess, to a lot of people, it would be considered sort of a challenging form of music from a listener standpoint. What do people need to understand or learn about experimental jazz to make it more instantly palatable to them?
That's a great question. I was going to say they have to learn to not care, sort of, because the musicians are up there not caring about what's right or wrong. Everything's right, just let it move along where it wants to move you, in whatever harmonic shape. So for the audience to also not care, to just sort of be like, all right, well, what's going to happen? I'm just as open as they are up there. If they were to be in that sort of mental space, I think that would help a lot. A lot of free improvisation has a lot to do with like an individual's philosophy in life, you know? Like, however you are as a being and however you find, you know, sort of peace and like depth in who you are, you know, however you find that is like pretty much what we're doing on stage. We're just being ourselves, and we're gonna get into whatever we want to get into. And I called up you to do this tour because you're my friend and I know you, and we're sort of connected. So I feel like if we're on stage and we're improvising for 300 people, we're gonna go well together. And it's like, you know, calling up your buddy and being like, I want to hang out with you because I like you. You don't know why. You just like their philosophy on life, and you hang out. It's cool.
Now, how much, by the way, what percentage of one of your concerts would be completely improvised versus structured and leaving windows for improvisation?
Right. Well, the duo got into, we sort of flipped. The duo used to do like 80-20. We used to do like 80% improv, 20% songs. Now it's like 90% songs, 10% improv. And we just sort of, just a natural progression of things. We just wanted to play different kinds of stuff and write different kinds of stuff. But at least with let's see, with this trio, there's more improvisation because, I don't know why. Because we wanted to leave it open for that. However, there are, you know, there are tunes. I would say it's 50-50 in this band.
Yeah, interesting you should mention that, because obviously your music strays into the rock realm, and you incorporate, I guess, elements of rock into it and whatnot. You perform with a lot of heavy rock people I know, right? People from the Dead and whoever else, right?
Right. I don't know. You know, I like I said, I went through a whole jazz phase. I went to Berkeley and you know, I studied with Joanne Brackeen and Brad Meldau and Kenny Werner and lots of great teachers in Boston at Berkeley and all over. I went to the Rotterdam Conservatory too and studied in Holland for a little bit, which is really cool. But I don't know, it's just maybe, what is it, like when you turn 30, your Saturn returns, right? Maybe I'm going back to my root. I just turned 30, so maybe I'm going back to my kid roots and wanting to just hit the distortion. Like, because when I was a kid, you know, I listened to Bon Jovi, Led Zeppelin, U2, Rolling Stones, the Beatles.
And speaking about when you're going back to your kids, kid years, obviously involve a lot of toys, and you and you incorporate actually the toys.
It's a natural
today,
progression
right?
of things.
Let's talk about the instruments for a minute. I mean, you've got everything. You're buried amongst keyboards, right? I mean, do you constantly change out the keyboards? You find like new things to play with on stage?
Yes, yes, and I owe lots of thanks to this amazing guy in Chicago. His name is Tom Stevenson. And he came to a duo gig with a duffel bag like this big. He's like, "Hey, dudes," and we're like, "Hey," kind of like quirky looking, normal dude, you know. It's like, oh, it's like, I got a bunch of these toys, and a friend of mine told me you'd be interested in them, and we were just like, okay, dude. And we opened the bag up, and he like pulled out this like plastic box spray painted with like 4 eyeballs sticking out of it, and like a scorpion painted on it, and you like mess with this knob, and it like does all this crazy stuff, and if you turn it, there's like a mercury switch in there which turns the liquid, which messes up the sound, and I was just like floored. I was like, okay. And I got the sound guy and I was like, you need to add 5 more inputs. We're gonna get random people from the stage to play these circuit bend toys to start this song. You know, I fell in love with these little circuit bend toys. They were so cool. And so Tommy just kind of hooks me up whenever I see him. We just played the Wicker Park Festival, the duo, and he was telling me about like his voice box that he's working on, and he's making pedals now that are just, you know, like distortion sort of weird pedals. You know, I don't know. I just
so it's an ever-changing. It's an
ever-changing thing. And you know what happened was, for a while I didn't really care about as much as all this stuff for a while. I don't know. I have a feeling that something happened when Joe and I made our album in L.A. We recorded Play Pause Stop, which is the latest duo record in L.A. with Tom Biller and Matt Chamberlain, and we were in this amazing studio, and those guys were hip to all these amazing amps and pedals, and in LA there's like that whole vibe going on, you know, like just music geeks, that are way into the old vintage stuff. There's tons of it. And I didn't really go there. I never really went there before. And then when I was in the studio and I saw how useful everything was and how important every little aspect of your rig was. And Charlie Hunter also sort of hit me on that stuff. He always had a great sound, and he's like, yo, check out this, I got this and that. And we had like a long discussion about germanium transistors and how they, how they affect the distortion pedals and all this stuff. And I was just like, oh my God, like then you start getting hit to like, how the synthesizer was invented, like how Robert Moog decided to put all this stuff together to make an electronic sound, to make a new instrument. Like, then you just start thinking that, that is a huge part of you as a musician, to find how you want to know how everything's made. It's like a beer connoisseur knows like if there's too much hops, or a wine connoisseur knows if it's 94 or 98. You know what I mean? It's like you want to know your instrument. You want to know what you're playing.